Okay, we've got the five of us, but no Steve as yet. We do have Steve Kramer, not Steve.
Right.
Urban Renewal Agency. I'm just making sure I'm in the right place. That I'm not.
That is kind of a big evening for you, Mr.
Should I be doing the joining of Zoom?
Steve.
Yes. And push your button for your tape.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Zilko was trying to get on his Zoom. He told me it would be approximately 6 o'clock when we put in session.
They're definitely there, but is it live streaming? Why isn't it started? Oh, I know, because I haven't done this piece.
Isetta Linda Miller's in.
Paula, please add Linda Miller to the roll call.
Yes. Well, shoot. I'm not muted. No, it's me. I have too many windows open. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think and I know we have quorum because Linda Miller has joined us, so I will call the open session of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board order. I will ask the agency board if there is any decision or motion to be made from the executive session. Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Can you please, can we please do a roll call because we have people here who weren't before?
Okay, let's do another roll call, Paula.
Stacy Coburn.
Present.
Bob Delaney. Absent. John Frederick.
Here.
Gary Grossman.
Here.
Lon Curtis.
Present.
Kim McLaughlin. Absent. Scott Baker. Absent. Linda Miller.
Here.
Thank you.
So that was, I have a question. Was
Yes,
there
Linda.
an executive session?
Yes, there was.
Well, I didn't know about it. I don't have any information on it.
Well, there was no decision made from that executive session, Linda, so items there will be rediscussed.
Okay.
Okay. Once again, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted to you by email or mail.
So moved.
Been moved. Do I have a second?
This is Darcy. I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by giving a thumbs up. Or you can use the little thumb thing down at the
Aye.
bottom. Okay.
Aye.
Linda, did you say yes?
Yes.
Miller said yes.
Thank you.
Okay. You also had the minutes submitted to you of the February 27th meeting a long time ago. I will entertain any additions or corrections or a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve with a correction that I was not absent.
We will make that correction. Do I have a second for that with that?
I'll second.
It's been seconded by John Frederick. All those in favor, give it the thumbs up. And Linda?
Aye,
All right,
aye.
thank you. Okay, now is the time for public comment. We do have several people that are on the phone, but I don't know that we're able to take comment at this time. Comment, I think, needed to be mailed in before the meeting. So moving on to action items. Item A, the disposition and development agreement, satisfaction of terms for the Granada Theater. Steve?
Yes, sir. The item before you this evening is the Granada Theater. And if you may remember the disposition and development agreement that was entered into between Mr. Gomez and Ms. Liddell and the agency, called for installment payments over a series of time, as well as a list of improvements, proposed improvements to the theater. And included within that was an estimated cost of those improvements. This is out of the DDA. And at the end of that period, which was a 3-year period, the agency were to consider the improvements that have been made, and then if they were satisfied that the terms of the agreement have been satisfied, then to direct staff to finalize the transaction. So again, before you is the purchase price was originally $60,000, 3 $20,000 installments. The last payment was made early, was made last March 2019. That satisfied the payment of the building. It still provided for 3 years of scheduled improvements. So we have included that list as in your attachment as part of the DDA. And then also Mr. Gomez submitted a memo that was dated March 28th. That was his progress report on the final improvements, and he's listed what the improvements were, what they did, agreed, as well as in a subsequent email from Mr. Gomez dated May 4th. As I stated, the original cost of those improvements were estimated about $305,000. It was noted in the agreement that that was an estimate at the time, and that Mr. Gomez was not obligated to spend that money, that amount of money. And so Mr. Gomez has replied to that requirement. And then also in the agreement, it includes a paragraph where the buyer was encouraged to apply for any relevant loans or grants from the agency for the property rehab program. And there was a facade improvement grant that was approved in August of 2017 of $18,675 with an applicant's match for certain exterior improvements of the building. So that has occurred. So before you this evening is the final documentation of this project. Again, with the list of improvements over the 3-year period. The building has been paid in full. And so now the action before the board is to consider whether the improvements meet the terms of the agreement, they're satisfied, and then direct staff to prepare the final documentation to finalize the purchase. In staff's opinion, the developer has satisfied the terms of the DDA as outlined in section 2.61 and we have included a recommended action for the board's consideration this evening. That concludes the report.
Good. Do we have any questions or discussion on the part of the agency? John?
I think that Chuck and Deborah Gomez have brought professional entertainment and theater to our community. They've become a part of our community. They are an asset to our community, and they've done exactly what they said they were going to do in the time frame that they did it. And I think they need to be congratulated for that.
Absolutely, John. Thank you for the comments. Other discussion or questions? Linda?
I agree with John completely. I think this is a true asset. They brought back a treasure to our community that didn't look like we were going to have it for a while.
Steve?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, let's make this official. I'll
All
move to
right.
accept the terms of the DDA dated March 31st, 2017.
I have a comment first. May I?
Sure.
Well, certainly interrupt the motion.
Well, I thought we were taking turns, sorry. I just had a couple of questions. I agree that it's wonderful that the Granada has been saved, and I'm very excited and happy about that. Just in terms of the DDA and questions that I would honestly ask of anyone else, was a walkthrough done by staff to verify that everything in the DDA was completed?
No, I have not.
Okay, and then I saw the correspondence between you and Mr. Gomez, and I appreciated you including that. But I was wondering, usually I think for DDAs, don't we usually require some kind of receipts or documentation when part of the DDA is about how much money they spent on items?
If I may, we do require that in our loan and grant program, part of the reimbursement. So we do have established precedent for that. I did ask Mr. Gomez for more documentation on the money spent in my email, and that's why I included this email exchange in the packet. So again, if the board feels that additional information is needed or receipts of the work, that's a message that I can convey back to Mr. Gomez.
So I will let others weigh in on that, but I just thinking about other buildings that we're looking at and other projects and what we've required. I do think it's good business, especially since we sold the building for only $60,000, which created a lot of discussion in the community about whether or not we made the right decision. I would really love to be able to say that, yes, we confirmed it visually, and yes, we have all the receipts to prove that the work was done. If for no other reason than just rehab of the Urban Renewal Agency's reputation in the community.
Thank you, Darcy. Other comments, concerns?
This is Linda. I'm good with what's been done.
Yeah, I think Darcy's got a point in the sense that we need to be attentive to this in the future. I think Chuck has done, in some cases, more than we asked him to do, Chuck and Deborah. And I don't have any particular concern, although maybe as a follow-up, just to make sure we have documentation, Steve, that he give us some documentation on that, what he does have in this particular case.
And perhaps a modification to the motion that would add upon the receipt of the expenses or something like that, make that subject to.
That could be done by the person making the motion. Stacy?
Mr. Chair, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. I think, Darcy brings up a good point, and while I haven't been inside, I have to admit personally, it looks beautiful from the outside, and I'm sure that all of those things were done, but I think it sets a precedent that we want to make sure we continue going forward, that we, double check to make sure everything is being done. And unless you can show on paper it's been done, you don't know it's been done till you see it. So I agree. I think we need to move forward in that direction. I can make a motion unless we want to have more discussion.
Certainly. Go ahead and make the motion, Stacy.
Okay.
I think we're good.
I move to accept the terms of the DDA dated March 31st, 2017 between the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency and Mr. Charles Gomez and Ms. Deborah Lydell have been satisfied. Have been satisfied upon receipt of documents supporting all expenditures, to direct staff to prepare the documentation to finalize the purchase and change of title of real property located at 221 East 2nd Street, known as the Granada Theater, and to authorize the agency chair to execute said documentation.
Do I have a second?
Miller seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Paula, please add Tim McLaughlin to the roll call.
Thank you.
We have motion and second. Any further discussion? Tim, we are voting on the release of the Granada Theater upon the receipt receiving receipts and documentation of the expenses that were incurred.
Understood.
If we have no further discussion, all of those in favor of the motion, please signify by giving a thumbs up of some kind.
Miller, ayes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a unanimous decision on that, so motion carries.
Excuse me, Mr. McLaughlin, did you vote on that?
Yes, he did.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item, which is authorization to execute third addendum to the disposition and development agreement for the recreation building on 2nd Street. And back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As one of my econ professors once told me, there is no such thing as a free lunch. So, agency received notification from our insurance carrier, CIS, that they would no longer be providing coverage of the recreation building upon the renewal of the policy beginning July 1. So we have been in discussions with Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid about this decision. Our city attorney has held discussions with them and also with CIS to see what we can do as we proceed with the purchase and redevelopment of the property. The CIS, their suggestion was for the buyer to purchase what's called a builder's risk policy that has a very, I guess, specific terms of coverage. So we're assisting them in looking into that. If it is not an option that continued coverage, insurance coverage by the agency, we would have to have an addendum to the DDA because it does require that the agency continue with that coverage. So what we're doing at this time is just essentially we're notifying the board of this decision by our insurance carrier, and we'll continue to work with them. But if we are unsuccessful, then we would have to come back at your meeting in June with this addendum to the DDA that places the burden of insurance coverage on the buyer and not the agency. So Again, this may be something that is not necessary, but because of the July 1st deadline, we wanted to bring this to your attention and if necessary, continue to work. And hopefully, the buyer can be able to find their own coverage, and you can bring that back for an addendum at your June meetings. Again, I included the page from the DDA, section 8.23 that sets the limits, the liability coverages, et cetera. And so that would be the section of the DDA that would require an addendum. So again, at this time, we're just looking for direction to move forward and direct staff to prepare the third addendum to the recreation building DDA, return on June 16th as necessary.
Good. Any questions, discussion on the part of the agency? Okay, none in terms of discussion. Do we need a motion, Steve, or just direction from the agency to prepare the third addendum?
Well, I think either one, but just a motion to direct staff to prepare and have that and continue with this, and if necessary, then it would be prepared. We'll come back.
Okay, I'd entertain the motion. John?
I'll move to direct the staff to prepare a draft third addendum to the Recreation Building DDA and return to the agency on June 16th for consideration.
Do I
I'll
have a
second
second?
Darcy will
seconds.
second that.
All those in favor, give the thumbs up.
Miller, yes.
Okay, motion carries. One more item, action item this evening, Sunshine Mill, which is also Discover Development LLC's installment loan interest credit request. And we will have Steve outline that. I see that we have Natasha Scove from Sunshine Mill, and also I presume it's James Martin. It just says James. But James Martin from Sunshine Mill as well. Steve?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll begin by giving just a brief background and history of our relationship with the Sunshine Mill property. So you may remember that in 2017, the agency, at the request of Sunshine Mill, restructured the installment loan agreement and the land sales contract. We consolidated both of the loan and the sales contract into a separate or a single document. At that time, the outstanding balance of the installment loan was $290,000. The land sales contract was $309,700. So those were combined. There was also an interest credit from past interest being paid of $105,582. So the new balance with that restructured agreement was $494,118 and change. Now, also included in that restructured loan agreement was a provision that provided for a credit and interest paid by the mill as a result of the difference between 5.25%, which was the rate on their current loan, with 2.25%, which was a rate at that time. I think that was the prime rate at that time. So that equated to $33,333.48 of interest that could be refunded back to the buyer. There was a couple of provisions on that. One that there was certain, I guess, taxes and some other payments had to be, that were in arrears, had to be made current. There was also the provision that all the installment payments would be made on time, and then at the end of the period, the mill could be eligible for that refund. Those terms were met. At the beginning of the year, we were contacted by Wasco Title. The mill representatives were in the process of obtaining a commercial loan. They contacted City Attorney Gene Parker. At that time, he produced a letter informing them that the satisfaction of the mortgage in an amount of $249,649. That would be what the outstanding balance was. The satisfaction of mortgage was recorded January 9th, 2020. And then we were contacted by representatives from the mill requesting the $33,333 in credit for interest paid. There was an email exchange again with former city attorney and representatives from the mill. And Mr. Parker had determined that the mill was not eligible for that $33,000 in interest credit. So they again contacted the city to request a reconsideration. And by that time, Mr. Parker had retired. And our new city attorney, Diana McDougall, reviewed the terms of the loan agreement, and she was of the opinion that the mill did satisfy the terms of the agreement and was eligible for that $33,000 in interest credit. And since I did not have a separate memo from Gene Parker, I included in the body of your agenda report some of the emails between the mill representatives and Mr. Parker. There is a memo from Diana McDougall included in your packet, and she states, gives the background and the discussion and her opinion that the mill is eligible for the credit. And since this request, and I had conflicting opinions from legal staff on whether they were or not eligible for credit, decided that this would be a matter that the board should make that final decision on. So that is where we are today. I included in your packet some of the past agenda reports and meeting minutes from 2017, where this restructuring was discussed by the agency. Included the satisfaction of mortgage letter and also that promissory note from the loan agreement as well. So a fairly full packet, very complete. So again, what's before you this evening is if in your determination whether the Sunshine Mill has satisfied the terms of the agreement and are eligible for the $33,333.48 interest credit. And that
Okay,
concludes
thank you for your report, Steve. I know Darcy was involved in negotiating the last agreement with the Sunshine Mill, and a number of you were on the agency board at the time this decision was made, and certainly have had some sentiment that the will of the agency would be, at the time, was to do things in a way that would allow this credit. But certainly need some discussion from the agency members that were there at the time, and certainly any of your other concerns or questions. If you have concerns or questions, I don't believe that public members are able to speak. So I'm not sure that we'd be able to get input.
It's up to you.
Pardon?
It's up to the chair. They're
It's up to the
here,
chair,
so it's
okay.
up to you.
Well, then we do have representatives of the mill here that you may want to address questions to. So with that, questions or comments? Linda?
I believe that they've done what we asked them to do. And so I'm all, and because there's conflicting with comments from the attorneys, I think that we should go ahead and I believe there was a letter from the bank that they did obtain financing through, and It's a community bank, and I think that we should go along with it.
Thank you, Linda. Others? John?
I disagreed with this at the time we approved it, but we did prove it, and that's what we agreed to.
Okay. Other input? Darcy?
Yeah, so that was certainly in the intent of the agreement when I negotiated it with Sunshine Mill, with Natasha. It was that provision. I worked with the finance director to come up with something that was mutually acceptable to both the agency and to Sunshine Mill, with the intent being that we were trying to incentivize them to go through what was a really difficult process to get a loan and pay us off so that we wouldn't be in the finance or the banking industry. That was one of the comments that had been made. And so I worked really hard to achieve that. And I think that they did it, and I think we should honor it.
Thank you, Darcy. Tim?
Yes, I was not on the board at that time. However, listening to the review that I just heard, that the current attorney, Diana McDougall, she has made a determination that they are eligible, and I accept that, and it seems like the logical thing to do.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments, input on part of the agency? Well, I certainly feel that the Sunshine Mill is a incredibly great asset and shining star in our economic development. And it's been a long development time. And so I don't have background other than what the new attorney has determined. In the case of conflicting legal opinions, my tendency is going to be to go to the people being affected on the other side. So for me, I'm in support of providing the 33,000 all the way down to the 03 cents. So do we have any other discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make the motion. I move to approve payment of the $33,333.48 interest credit payment under Section 3.02 of the agency loan agreement mortgage record date of March 26, 2018, and authorize staff to transfer $33,333.48 to Discover Development LLC as credit for interest paid.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Stacy seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Seeing no indication of that, all of those in favor, give it a thumbs up.
Miller, aye.
It's a unanimous decision. Thank you, John. It's a unanimous decision. With our thanks to the Sunshine Mill for having done the development they have and launched off on their own, we very much appreciate it. So we're at the point for staff comments. Steve, you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to remind the board that your next meeting, your regularly scheduled meeting, is June 16th. At this time, we are assuming that will also be conducted via Zoom online. We will have your proposed budget fiscal year 2020-21 that will be up for your adoption. I'd also like to include just a couple of information items for that meeting. One, I was contacted and had a conversation with a representative from the Commodore building, Commodore 2, Mr. Terry Cook. Mr. Cook has requested some financial assistance from the agency. I reviewed our current property rehab loan and grant program guidelines. And there's one item that he would like the agency that he's paid for, that he'd like a reimbursement if possible. That may be eligible. The other request, I don't think it's eligible this time. Again, if there's, wanted to bring that to the board for discussion purposes, and then see what the action would be after that. The other item has to do with, I guess, economic development in general. If you have been tracking through the various bills, appropriation bills, there are monies coming towards the states for economic development, economic recovery funds. And some of those funds come in the community development block grant categories. And so there may be some opportunities for some of the local businesses that would be eligible for some of these funds, economic assistance funds. So I'd like to give the board just a report out on those programs. There's been discussion at the state level and all the various urban renewal agencies on if urban renewal funds could be applied towards business assistance, economic recovery. Our urban renewal consultant, Elaine Howard, published a short memo on that. Essentially, urban renewal funds are not for operating and maintenance, they're for capital expenditures. But some agencies are looking at the individual taxing districts themselves. We had the presentation on an under levy at our February workshop. And so some of the agencies are looking at having like this annual or this one-time under levy of funds. So the funds would remain with the taxing districts, and then those taxing districts could be eligible for then providing business assistance rather than the agency. So that's one thing I'll provide to you. And also, as I mentioned, through the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act, there are funds available for economic assistance. Again, we've been, city and county staffs, we've been involved in a number of webinars over the last several weeks. And so again, just to give the board an update on what's happening out there, what may be eventually coming to the agency is perhaps helping some businesses. So those are the three things. I have been in discussions with representatives of the downtown property owner, perhaps submitting an application for one of our loan and grant rehab programs, like a facade improvement grant. Haven't received anything to date, but if that does come, we'll see if we can get that on the next agenda as well. So, other than that, that concludes the staff's comments this evening.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Paula, just a point of order, please make sure and provide the executive session background materials to Linda in the form that she likes it.
Hey, may I say something?
Sure.
I did receive them, but there was no mention of executive session prior to 6 o'clock.
Did you get the materials though for the executive session?
I did.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a day and time of confusion as to start date times and end times and all kinds of stuff. So I'm sure we'll hear from a couple of board members that meant to be here tonight too. So any other board members, comments or questions? Tim.
Please accept my apology for being tardy. I guess I'm just zoomed out.
Yeah, we're all zooming a little too much. Best wishes to Mr. Kramer this evening.
I did see Mr. Frederick's hand up. Oh, I see Mr. Kramer. Oh, a bunch of guys.
We'll take Mr. Frederick and then Mr. Kramer.
This is Tony Zilka.
Yes, Tony.
I got on about 6:04. I didn't know whether they talked about the blue building 205 Washington, and was there any questions that you needed from me on that?
It was discussed in executive session, Tony, and no decisions were made. So there'll be further discussions coming.
Okay, and if anybody had any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
Well, we appreciate that, but it was an executive session, so we'll delay that till we move to the next meeting.
Okay, awesome. So I was having trouble getting on the Zoom and I got on about 6:04 and I go, oh my God, I missed it.
Well, we appreciate you being here, Tony. John?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Harris, when we talking about the Commodore building from Mr. Cook, I'd like to know what the occupancy rate has been over the years in that building. And also I'd like information on the HUD agreement with the rental assistance. Is there a sunset on that, or what the whole agreement was? I wasn't on the board when that all started. I'd just like more information on that.
For that one, I remember, I think you said 2038 for that agreement for that, for those housing units. It was just extended recently.
Well, good. If you could get the other information, that would, I think, be good. And Commissioner Kramer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to let Mr. Zilka and Mr. Cassidy know that we only had 5 members of the 9 members in executive session. And I think the consensus of the group that we were not comfortable moving forward with the projects. We needed more conversations. So Mr. Harris will be in touch with the 2 of you to move that forward. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Any other comments? If not, we're adjourned until June 16th, and we be Zooming again, or maybe in person. We'll see. Thanks, everybody.
Nine.
Good night.